Blessings, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. I don't have a guest for this podcast as I haven't for the last few, and I think I'm just taking this time right now to address some topics that I've been interested in for a while and really haven't had the opportunity to talk about. Today, I want to share my screen in a couple of minutes. I want to talk about a graph. I don't know what you'd call it, a graph or a meme or a certain online argument that's become popular with certain Roman Catholics. And that's that whenever, usually you see it whenever a survivor or someone else just brings up the topic of priest sex abuse in the Catholic Church, inevitably a Catholic, usually a Catholic apologist enabler, will chime in and say that, well, the child sex abuse problem is much worse in public schools. Um, that's their argument. It's kind of like saying, my house is cleaner than a crack house. It's sort of like, well, so what, you know? And it's sort of ironic too, because these are typically very conservative Catholics who, you know, look at the public school system, and there's some truth in this. The public school system in the United States is just a cesspool and, hellhole of perversion and uh, brainwashing and abuse, and there's some truth in that. But yet they're comparing their church, what they describe as the spotless bride of Christ, to the public school system. So it doesn't make any sense at all. So what brought this to mind? Let me share my screen with you all. Okay. So what originally brought this to my attention yet again, although I've seen this particular meme many times, which is a Catholic reaction to anyone talking about the pre-sex abuse problem in the Catholic Church, saying, well, it's worse in public schools. I saw it because someone from the Daily Wire, I'm vaguely familiar with him, Michael Knowles, um, reposted it. I did a little research on him. I found the hypocrisy interesting, but hypocrisy is, you know, throughout the Catholic Church and Catholics, um, these sort of conservatives, like at the Daily Wire, their bread and butter is, you know, uh, talking about drag queens and which, they're free to do, and there's definite issues with the expansion of this sort of drag culture in the United States, and especially how it's affected children. But it's okay to hang out and with drag queens when it's for a good cause, I guess. Oh, I should say again, he is a Catholic shill for the Catholic Church. The other prominent Catholic at the Daily Wire is Matt Walsh. So Michael Knowles liked this tweet from Spencer Clavin. Spencer Clavin's father is Andrew Clavin, I believe, who's a prominent Christian convert. Spencer Clavin is openly gay. He's done podcasts which manipulate scripture in order to make it seem that Jesus, vis-a-vis Christianity, didn't have any problem with homosexual activity. And here is Spencer Clavin with his husband, who's also uh, a, a big deal at the Daily Wire. And Austin Ruse, who's a Catholic, I consider him a friend. God bless him. I hope he considers me a friend as well. Wrote this massive problem: the normalization of homosexuality among conservative elite. This is Spencer Clavin holding hands with his lover. The photo is liked by Knowles. We can never accept this. Thank you, Austin. I agree. So here's Spencer Clavin. Hey guys, so no homo, but I'm marrying this dude, Jeremy Boring, who's in charge of the Daily Wire. Congratulations, fellows. May your lives be happy and edifying. It's interesting because Jeremy Boring, I don't pronounce his last name, recently sort of publicly came out with sort of this trend on Twitter about Christians proclaiming that Christ is king, and he had an issue with that, but two dudes is edifying. So here's sort of the Grift Hall of Fame. Ben Shapiro of the Daily Wire. This is a Daily Wire sort of roll call picture. Ben Shapiro, Spencer Clavin, Jordan Peterson, who does a lot of work with them, or works with them or for them. I don't know how you describe it. Bishop Robert Barron, a very sleazy, corrupt Catholic bishop, and Jonathan Peugeot. Here's a Michael Knowles interviewing Spencer Clavin, how to save the West. I don't care who these people uh, interview. They can interview them whoever they want, and they can interview them however they want. But I find it hypocritical again when they have these sort of tea with Mussolini interviews with people who have standed for some pretty radical things, like like manipulating Christian scripture in order to approve of homosexuality. You think that Michael Knowles would want to address that? No, they don't. Same thing with Jonathan Peugeot, just sort of skips over it, you know, gives him a free pass. Interesting. Here is also Michael Knowles in his lovely Christmas sweater giving uh, a pass to Bishop Robert Barron, America's bishop. Uh, I call these tea with Mussolini interviews because it's like, you get an interview with, somebody who's been involved in rape, abuse, molestation on a large scale. I mean, we're talking about millions of children in the world, and you have these lightweight tea time interviews with them. It's disgusting. And here he is again giving, I don't know how that happened. How did I focus? Oh, here. Here's another. It's chilling. It's grifting. It's ridiculous. Okay, this gets me to why I'm here today. Michael Knowles, 2018. He was reacting to someone again. He's reacting to someone on Twitter talking about pre-sex abuse in the Catholic Church, and he wrote, according to a study prepared by the USDE, the U.S. Department of Education, American children are orders of magnitude more likely to be sexually abused by a school teacher than a Catholic priest. According to several studies, child abuse is no more prevalent among Catholics than any other religious group. I could not find any study prepared by the USDE which compared and contrasted American children. It's a complete lie. It's a fabrication. If he or someone wants to produce this document, I'd be interested in seeing it. But I would be surprised that the U.S. Department of Education would do anything that has to do uh, with comparing. It's so ridiculous comparing the amount of child sex abuse in American public schools as opposed to the Catholic Church. It's an absolute. It's a lie. Okay, I just want to talk about something real quick because he said that according to several studies, child abuse is no more prevalent among Catholics than in any other religious group. he didn't, where's the evidence? He didn't put it here. I couldn't find those studies, so-called studies. So I actually did some research on myself. I couldn't find them either. And probably the most recent sort of child, well, it wasn't dealing with children. That's the thing. So let me backtrack. The most recent sex abuse scandal involving a Christian church happened recently with the Southern Baptist Convention, or the SBC. Okay, a little info here. The SBC is the second largest religious denomination in the US after Roman Catholic. They have approximately 13 million members. And now, according to this sort of it, it it caused a lot of it garnered a lot of media attention in the mainstream media when this report about sex abuse in the SBC was made public. They found that there were 700 victims. What I could ascertain, they were predominantly female and adult, from 1998 to 2019, 700 victims. That's in a church that has about 13 million members. Now, in the Catholic Church in the United States, there's about 71 million members, but that's kind of deceiving because only about 17% of those attend church at least once a week. So 17% of that 71 million go to Sunday Mass. Now, this is the problem with Roman Catholicism consistently is they cover up and they obfuscate responsibility. So I had a difficult time finding numbers for Catholic sex abuse victims in the United States. Europe has been much better at this, not surprising, because I mean, the Catholic Church has completely collapsed in Western Europe. There's a priest that I knew, I haven't spoken to him in many years, but that I knew in a Catholic priest that I knew in Western Europe, and he said the church there is just a standing edifice, which are no, no, no. He said a standing ruin, which I thought was interesting because I remember back in the year 2000, I was staying for a time at the Benedictine Abbey of Faucombeau in France, and I had college degrees were in art history, and I was particularly fascinated with the Romanesque. So I spent quite a few days driving. I'd rented a car driving around the Loire Valley in central France, where a lot of the Romanesque churches were. You know, going to visit these beautiful architectural, treasures. And many times I would go to this town or even a city. It was less so in a city because, especially if it was a well-known church, you had tourist traffic. But a lot of times these beautiful churches would have literally holes in the ceilings. That's because they were more or less abandoned, and people didn't go to church. People didn't identify as Catholic. The church has collapsed. So vis-a-vis, they're much less powerful than in the United States. So there's been some pretty good studies coming out of Europe. One out of France found from 1950 to 2020, there were 330,000 victims of pre-sex abuse in the Catholic Church. So, I mean, France is a smaller country, although it is, a more historically Catholic country, of course, in the United States. It's much older. So I said, well, I'm going to take that number. So the SBC, we had 700 victims in that sort of 20-year period. And in the Catholic Church, we had 330,000 victims in that 70-year period. So what I did was I adjusted the SBC numbers to reflect Catholicism's larger number of members and that larger expanse of time. And what I came up with when I adjusted it for membership and span of victimization, that if you compare the SBC with the Catholic Church, if they had the same amount of members in the same time period, the SBC would have had 13,860 victims, as opposed to 330,000 victims. So, Mr. Knowles, according to several studies, child abuse is no more prevalent among Catholics than in any other religious group. Yeah, says who? It's not comparable. It's not even comparable. Okay, moving on. Okay, here he is again. 2022. So this is very recent. A child is much more likely to be sexually abused in a public school than a Catholic church. The numbers aren't even close. Really? Okay. So he's responding to this person. The Catholic Church is far worse. Have you ever commented on that? Or is that so? That's his reaction to this is the Catholic reaction to so many people who bring this up. It's sort of like telling the mother of a murder victim in New York City, pat them on the back, pat them on the head, be really patronizing. It's okay. No big deal. There are more killings in Chicago. Nice. Okay, let's I think this is the graph that because he said there earlier, Michael Knowles said that there was something from the US Department of Education. And this graph you see retweeted constantly. I couldn't find an ultimate source for it. I think it was just homemade. I don't know. I would be like to be proven wrong. It doesn't look professional. It's meant to deceive because at the bottom, let me get my cursor here. At the bottom, you see source, U.S. Department of Education, and then it gives a hyperlink to some document. Okay, here's that document that they're referring to. And I don't know who made that, but I actually read it. Um, I could not find anywhere in this document where it refers to the Catholic Church. Nowhere. Nowhere. But I don't know where they're coming from. They're just straight out lying. Let's see. Back to Michael Knowles. Okay. According to this, there were, and it's so vague, average yearly cases of child sexual abuse, 29,000, public school employees, Catholic priests, 201. Okay, all I can figure out that those numbers, it's very confusing because it's the deceptive document. Okay, here's this document, but I also found this document here. Let's see. I'm going to give sources here so people don't give me a hard time, which they will do anything. This is Civil Rights Data Collection of Sexual Violence, K through 12 Schools, issue brief, U.S. Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights, December 2022. So that was page 11 that I was on. Um, okay. About 15,000 victims, incidents of sexual violence in a given year, a little over 14,000 incidents of sexual assault in a given year. Okay. So I did some reading on this. Um, the Department of Education, I'm looking at my notes, sorry, has a much broader definition of sexual abuse. I would say a broader. I wouldn't say much broader because then it means I'm making a comparison, but I actually am with the Catholic Church. So their definition included things like sexual manipulation and harassment. Okay. Now the Catholic Church, no. When we're talking about cases of sexual victimization in the Catholic Church, we're talking about child rape. Okay. I mean, I was abused in the Catholic Church, but if I added up all the times I was sexually harassed in the Catholic Church by a priest, I mean, come on. Okay. Let's just look at the stupidity of this graph. If you want to compare apples and oranges, public schools in the United States, number of teachers over 4 million. Number of Catholic priests in the United States, about 37,000. 25,000, almost 26,000 of those are diocesan. So you're comparing two wildly different things here. In public schools, 18 to 20% of the victimization is same sex. I'm referring to these documents here. Whoever created this is same sex. In the Roman Catholic Church, it's actually the opposite. 80% is same sex. And here is the results of studies that show the gender of the victim. And it's the results are are pretty wide ranging, but the majority are female victims in public schools. And then here you see the uh, the sex of the gender of the perpetrator, and it describes right here how there's some outline studies, but that the majority of abusers, perpetrators are male, 90% in the 90s. Okay, the problem is making these comparisons. 15 the majority of so the 18 to 20% of victimization is same sex in public schools. So that means the majority is um, female victims. 15% of males ever report sex abuse, while the majority of females do. Also, the majority of that 15% of males who ever report do so in typically in middle age, not at the time of victimization. So this graph is meant to deceive. So first of all, they're comparing two wildly different institutions with wildly different numbers. This number, no, the way the Catholic Church tallies up abuse is they do it by the year that the victimization took place. So they always describe as there being a peak of abuse in, say, the 70s and 80s and a drop. But oftentimes those incidents of abuse are not reported or or even remembered by the victims until much later, till recently now. So this again is deceptive. They're talking about, and I don't even know where they get this number. They're talking about incidents of abuse that occurred in the year that it occurred in that year that the abuse occurred. Sorry, I'm getting annoyed. See, wait, I want to stick with this a little longer because I want to wait, let's move on to this. This is from this document from the U.S. Department of Education. Let's flip back here. From 2017 to 2018, there were 14,938 incidents of reported rape or attempted rape in public schools alone. For the same time period, there were For the same time period, there were another 14,152 reports of sexual assault other than rape. So, I mean, men are reticent in general to report incidents of actual rape. Um, they're even more reticent to report incidents of same-sex harassment. And this is anecdotal evidence again, but I used to run a Catholic Bible store, which is crazy. But anyway, I mean, when I started to be public with my, my story of abuse in the Catholic Church. I had several men that came into my store and thanked me and said that they hadn't been molested um, or raped by a Catholic priest, but they'd certainly been sexually harassed by Catholic priests. And of course, those incidents were never reported. There's also something interesting that I want to mention here too, because I think it goes part and parcel with this discussion, and that's that I mean, again, only 15% of males ever report sexual abuse, but also as someone who used to identify as gay, and this is anecdotal evidence again, but here I've got some hard data to substantiate it, is that I noticed when I was gay that a large number of men had been sexually abused as children by men. And I also noticed that a large number of gay men had been sexually abused by priests as children. And I think amongst gay men, there's an incredible reticence, and I think it has to do with brainwashing, to consider those early sexual experiences, which were rape, which were molestation, as that, as sexual violence. It's often viewed as sort of a coming out or an older gay man who initiated or um, guided them or made them or helped them to realize who they were. That's the way it was described. I mean, most famously, I've described this before, is the George Takei interview that he did, where he talked about being, I mean, he talked about it as being having sex with an older man when he was a child in a scout troop. But I mean, it was molestation, but he didn't consider it that, and that I saw that a lot. Here's the impact of sexual abuse on sexual identity formation in gay men. This study, anecdotal evidence suggests that a significant subset of children abused by clergy identify as gay as adults. I have found that to be true. So again, I think there's a large number of men who were sexually abused by priests who later identify as gay, who of course never report it because they don't consider it abuse. Oh, Lord have mercy. Okay, Matt Walsh did the same thing. It's not more prevalent in the Catholic Church. 260 reports of child sexual abuse in Protestant churches per year means it is least as prevalent there and is more prevalent in public schools, where the numbers dwarf both Catholic and Protestant churches. Gosh, this is just thick. It's just thick, sadistic. I'm trying to hold my temper here to say these things because it's manipulation, it's wrong, and it's a lie. And I just showed that it's a lie. I just proved that it's a lie. Okay, I fixed it for you people. Okay, because this is what I did here. Okay, we've got a number of victims in the Roman Catholic Church. Again, I'm using the French stats um, because, as usual, the U.S. Catholic priests are paragons of they are they're all about transparency, and they don't want to ever give the appearance of covering anything up. They don't have a history of this at all. So I'm using the French stats of 1950 to 2020, 330,000 victims, which I think is low. So taking into consideration that only 15% of males ever report sex abuse, I calculated a new number of victims in the United States, which is 1,980,000, almost 2 million. So if we want to manipulate a graph like they did and sparse it out to yearly averages, it's 39,000 um, victims a year, 39,600. Wonder if they're going to show that graph. Well, one thing he maybe did get right, where he said the numbers aren't even close. And you know what, Mr. Knowles, they're not. If you want to look at the ratios in public schools, and I'm not making excuses for public schools, academically they're a mess, and what they indoctrinate children into is a mess as well. So I'm not, but the comparison's bizarre. So for every victim in public schools, there are 139 teachers for every victim. In the Catholic Church, there's 9 victims for every priest. So, Mr. Knowles, you're right. Let me get my cursor. The numbers aren't even close. These people, Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh, we have a First Amendment in this country. They can address this topic however they want. They can enable, they can cover up, they can shill for abusers in the Catholic Church. I think it's actually best, considering however you feel about this issue, or however you feel about the numbers that I've described. You have to admit the Catholic Church has a massive problem in this area. Okay, if you just want to look at this Wikipedia page, I mean that I don't rely on Wikipedia much, but this is just data here. This is an opinion. Payments to victims. These are all of the settlements that let's look for the really large ones. Wow, Louisville. I didn't know that they paid out that much, over 25 million. Boston, of course, 85 million. Portland, Oregon, wow, 53 million. Tucson, 22 million. Spokane, Washington, 48 million. I'm surprised by some of these numbers because these aren't large dioceses. Orange, 100 million. I know LA is the largest. Yeah, Los Angeles, 60 million, 16 million, 12 million. 600, there it is. There's the large, that's the biggest ever recorded, 660 million. Um, San Diego, 198 million. New York City, 27 million. And here, of course, bankruptcies: Portland, Tucson, Spokane, Davenport, San Diego. Yeah, here's all the bankruptcies. Of course, where I live, this isn't updated. Yeah, this is not updated because we've also had San Francisco, Santa Rosa. Okay, so let's flip back to this. The point of that is that however you feel about the numbers that I've presented today, there's been a massive problem. So maybe if you're a Catholic, the best thing to do, if somebody, particularly a survivor, is talking about sex abuse, maybe you just need to listen and not pat them on the head and say, oh, more people were abused in public schools. Move along. Sick, sadistic, sick. That's all I can say. It's shilling. It's grifting. So Michael Knowles and your buddy. So Michael Knowles and your buddy Matt Walsh. You're guilty of covering up the crimes of the Catholic Church. Thank you.